Okay, so so just kind of starting off, is there anybody out there, and I'll have you put your hand up, and uh and actually I'll probably ask, I may ask you to talk. Is there anybody out there who works with pure Suri and has a kind of a thought one way or the other? What's your experience been with that? All right, so I've got Susie's phone. I don't know who that is, but I am going to, I think I can unmute you. Ask to unmute. What do I do? Hang on, guys. Sorry, I'm not the most technically. Ask to unmute. Okay, so I don't know who Susie's phone is, but if you would like to maybe share some thoughts with us, you might have to unmute yourself. Let's see. I don't know. Ask to unmute. All right. Well, all right. I'm going to go to the next person, Nancy Lindemood.
Hello.
Hey.
So what was the question again?
So, have you worked with just pure Suri? Like,
Yes.
Do you have any products that you make with just pure Suri, and maybe share your experience just in terms of maybe what the end use is for you on that, or who you're selling to, if you're selling that product to people?
I make a variety of different yarns, and some of them are pure Suri, and I use it to knit scarves, or I weave with it. Generally, I weave scarves, and I sell it at my yarn events. It gets sold always with explanation of how best to use it in 100% form, because a lot of people don't seem to be familiar with it, but they seem to be attracted to it.
Okay. And do you, and I don't want to name names here in terms of mills. So this might be a little bit more of a yes or no, or maybe just, keep it kind of broad, but is the yarn that the pure Suri that you're selling, is that mill spun or hand spun?
Mill spun.
Okay. And so when you kind of started down that road, did you have any issues with, with finding people, or finding mills that could do it, or?
I did not.
No. Okay. Good. Great. Let's see. Maureen Macedo. Looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah. I think we're unmuted. I'll do the video so you can see job. Larry and I. Yeah. Not that you may want to, but
we can only see the top of your head, though. Or at least on my little phone.
Probably. I can't see where I'm at there.
You gotta scroll over.
Okay,
that's
I gotta
okay,
scroll
though.
over. Okay, that's probably just as well. Yeah, so mostly the Suri I do hand spinning.
Okay.
Larry and I use it in a variety of ways. I really like the Suri for lace knit items. I just like the drape and that of it. Larry does, I'm not sure whether you count as 100% Suri, but
I do. I make rug yarn with the seconds in it, and it comes out really nice. It's got such a nice feel to it, and I don't blend it. I do it. No, I do blend some.
Well, some you blend, but we also do straight 100%.
Yeah,
but it's 100%. On a
100%.
Cotton core.
Yeah, and it comes out real nice. It's a little tighter than the Wakaya, and the rugs that come out of that.
Those sell
real,
well.
Yeah,
that rug yarn sells well both on our store in person and online sales as well.
And so are you all are you selling the the Suri, the rug yarn, just as
Sorry.
for lack of a better word, skeins, or are you actually making the rugs and then selling the
Yes.
rugs?
Yes,
Both.
on both.
Both. We do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we
Good.
do for other people as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And you said
Sorry, they're knocking almonds around here. It's really dusty.
and you said that you take that 100% Suri yarn and then wrap it around a cotton core. Is that what you mentioned?
Right. Uh-huh.
For the
Right.
rug yarn?
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
And it's fun. Yeah. Mute
Okay.
myself again.
All right. Let's see. Jean Van Effen. If you you've got your hand up.
There we go. Oh, look,
Go
I've got
ahead.
3 alpacas behind me. And Wakayas.
Ah,
Yeah, so I do 100% Suri. I usually like to spin it kind of fine. And then I do lace knitting with it. I'm a weaver, but I actually haven't woven with 100% Suri yet. And we also, in our mill, we make the core spun rug yarn, and the Suri is just beautiful because it's lustrous and it's tight. It wraps more tightly around the string, just like it does, you know, it doesn't have that crimp. So just like your Suri yarn is more dense than a blend or a Wakaya yarn, it makes gorgeous rug yarn, and we even felt with it. So
huh, interesting. Okay. And so when you so you have a mill? Is that?
yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So I didn't know. I noticed that you said when you spin it, and I wasn't certain if you were a hand spinner or if you
Well,
were a mill owner.
both. Mill
Both.
owner who also hand spins.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. And so when you're either knitting with it or because you said you hadn't yet woven with it, or you're selling it as knitting yarn, what kind of instructions are you or do you give people? Any sort of instructions maybe is too strong a word, but guidance or suggestions in terms of how to use that?
I suggest that they make something drapey that doesn't have to stretch. So I suggest towards shawls and scarves mainly, because I think that's where Suri really does great work. But I caution them that even with Wakaya, 100% Wakaya, trying to make a hat, that's not your best fiber for that. So I do tell people that. And when I have a chance, I may work on some labeling things to make sure that people understand that it's probably not for making hats.
Okay, good. This is all really interesting. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. Is there anybody here who might be new to Suri, who might have a question or two from any of the experienced people about using 100% Suri? See if any hands go up. All right, I do not have any hands. All right. Okay, well yeah, I mean, to me, that is consistent.
Liz,
Oh, yeah.
you have a hand.
Julie Roy has a hand up,
Oh,
as
okay.
as Nancy Lindemood.
Well,
Nancy's-
Nancy just spoke, though. I think Nancy maybe needs to take her hand down. There we go.
Okay. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm Julie Roy. I am not raising alpacas at the moment.
Okay.
Several of these people on here may know me because I'm an educator, and I'm attending because I want to educate myself more on Suri. But I do
Awesome.
have a
Thank you.
question. I was used to selling Wakaya fiber, and what I would like to know, if you are selling 100% Suri, what is the price difference between a skein of 100% Suri retail price and 100% Wakaya retail price? And whoever might give me a range or something like that. That would be very informative for me.
All right. Let's see here. Who wants to put their hand up?
Or answer in the chat or something. Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Let's
I also had
see.
a question for Maureen and Larry. Do they make their dryer balls with 100% Suri seconds?
No, we do
No.
not. No,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
okay.
It's
It does.
Suri doesn't like to felt into dryer balls.
at
That's what
least
I
we haven't
thought.
found the trick to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
I
makes
kind of thought
interesting
so.
characters, but no.
Yeah,
But no,
Okay.
our pricing's the same for Suri and Wakaya.
is it? Okay.
Okay.
And
Let's
do you
see.
sell in a 3-ounce skein or how do you sell it?
If it's mill spun, I generally have it done in 200-yard skeins, although occasionally in large cones. If I'm hand spinning, then it's I sell it by the ounce. Just depends on how I'm spinning it, 2-ply, 3-ply, or what the intended purpose is.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna say it varies.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay.
We've got, let's see, Yvonne put her hand up, so she might have a thought. Yvonne Jones.
Well, as far as pricing is concerned, I price mine all the same because it costs me the same amount of money whether I'm processing Suri or Wakaya. But I have a question in general as well.
Okay.
So I follow a lot of knitters, a lot of designers, and a lot of podcast people. And a lot of those folks are knitting with Suri alpaca yarn, knitting sweaters. And I'm only guessing at this because I don't know, but I'm going to ask the masses if they know. Is that really, is that like a 20% Suri and they're calling it Suri alpaca yarn and the rest of it's a wool blend? Or does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Sweaters would be hard.
And well, they're also holding usually a mohair with it. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you my thoughts. I don't know what any of the people on podcasts are
Well,
doing
and
or
I'll tell
anything
you
like
too,
that.
it's fuzzy. It's always fuzzy. And they're always talking
Yeah.
about the fuzz factor of Suri alpaca, and it makes me crazy because
Yeah.
it's not fuzzy.
Yeah.
I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were talking to Wade Geezy about it, and it's the way it's produced in, I guess, Peru. They
Yes.
brush it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's fuzzy. So we have to
Yep.
educate the public too that Suri alpaca is not fuzzy. But I just wanted to know what the thoughts were on the combination of what's out there commercially that people are buying, and if we can educate and maybe take over that market.
Liz?
I mean, I am aware of that yarn for sure. It's been around. I've been kind of producing on more of a commercial level for, I don't know, 10 years or so. And that brushed Suri has been around about that long. It is normally a lace yarn. So, at its core, I mean, it looks bulkier because it's got the brush to it, but I have not seen any sweaters with it. I have seen some blankets, but I think the blankets are woven. So, most of the stuff that comes up from a good one, actually, I'll tell you, Yvonne, a good one to look at is Blue Sky. I think it's Blue Sky alpacas.
Mm-hmm.
They sell alpaca fiber, and it's all commercial and all comes out of Peru. And they do have, I think it's like Suri Cloud, I think is what they call it. But they do have that on there, and you might be able to see what the blend is.
Okay.
I would think, I mean, I do sell patterns that are like sweater type patterns. Some of them, the yarns I use do tend to have, not always, but they do tend to have wool in them. But they don't necessarily have a lot of wool in them. I mean, usually what I tell people is if they're buying a sweater pattern from me, I explain to them that it's going to be loose fitting. It's going to be very drapey. It's not going to be a form fitting type of sweater. And there's a picture of it on the, on the front of the
Right.
thing. But yeah. So gosh, if people are using the fuzzy stuff and they're using 100% Suri for a sweater, that might be a little scary.
Okay. I was just curious if anybody knew what the combination was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Liz?
Yeah. Laurel, do you have a
Liz,
thought?
Yeah, I just happened, I was looking for, doing a weaving project and I need black Suri and I'm having a dickens of a time finding it. So of course I was searching using black Suri yarn on cones. And most of it, the quantity of Suri in it was really, really small. It never seemed to be 50% or higher. And it was always blended with merino and usually some nylon as well. So, so that may be what you're seeing being used by folks. But it's not easy to find 100% Suri yarn in the weight that I was looking for, which is a little stronger than the lace weight.
Well, I know
Okay.
here in Indiana, I can't find Surrey well, I've only got 2 yarn stores. I can't find Surrey fiber unless it's mine. So even commercial stuff, they're not carrying here. So yay for me, but
Yeah.
I was just curious because people are starting to ask for it more.
Yeah. They did. We did. There's a new publication out. It's interesting that you kind of bring that up because there's a new publication out. It's a digital publication called, and I may get the words switched around, but I think it's Farm and Fiber, and it's put on by the folks that do the Hand Woven magazine and Little Pieces and a couple of others, and they're kind of launching this newly. And they did a week on alpaca, and they actually asked, just with me being the liaison to the fiber committee and being on the board, I've kind of struck up a rapport with them, and they had asked for some comments because they did a little feature on Suri, just Suri, and they actually, in their questions to me, they actually brought up that question about the fuzziness of Suri. And I actually explained to them, and they did put it in the write-up, that that's something that Peru does, but that US Suri growers and people working with Suri here in the US tend, we don't brush it. And we tend to work with just a straight yarn. So that was one recent attempt to get the word out that you don't have to buy Suri brushed. So, okay, good. Is there anybody else here that, let's see, Elizabeth Nardo has her hand up. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of touch on any of the subjects we've covered here so far.
Hi, so I just have some new owner questions.
Sure.
I kind of have a 2-part, so if you want me to split them up or wait, happy to do that. My first question is, I have Wakaya alpacas, but a Suri llama, and I was wondering if anybody had experience with blending Suri llama with alpaca, or if it's just so similar that it doesn't matter. And then my second question is whether anybody has recommendations for mills, preferably in the Northeast. I live in Vermont, that can process pure Suri, because it's tough to find up here. I know mills are usually in high demand everywhere, but in Vermont we seem to have a pretty small pool to pick from. So yeah, just those 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in on these. So first of all, the Suri Wakaya topic we'll get to in a moment. So hopefully and Suri llama really shouldn't be any different than Suri alpaca. That's been my experience. Again, we can touch on that. and maybe that's a question for people here, if you have worked with Suri llama versus regular Suri alpaca, maybe that's a question we can ask. But we are gonna touch on blending Suri with Wakaya here in a minute. With regards to the mill question, I'm gonna ask, I want to steer clear of that. It seems like a simple enough question, but I just want to kind of steer clear, because I don't want to end up having, somebody saying, oh, try this mill, and then somebody jumps in, oh no, don't use that mill, that kind of thing. So we may at some point down the road actually do a deal, do one of these about mills, but we haven't really figured out how to do it without,
Liz,
by keeping it super positive.
I have put together for the Suri Network, for the marketing committee, a list of all the mills in the United States that I could find.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to share that list. So people can just go through it and choose something at their own risk, I guess is what you would say. Or call the different ones and get opinions. But if you want that list, I'm happy to share it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, actually, Suri, and actually, Yvonne, I may get with you later because I will say this, out on the Suri Network's website right now is a list of mills, and it's not all encompassing for sure. I think it was mills who answered our a questionnaire that the Fiber Committee did a few years ago. But you can look at that too, and it has a lot of categories on there in terms of like what's their experience with Suri, what kind of blends do they do, it's what services do they offer, washing, carding, that kind of thing. Yvonne, you may have a more comprehensive list, and so the Fiber Committee may want to work with you on that, and we can put our heads together in terms of
it's huge.
Okay, well, and we may want to send a questionnaire out to all those mills and see who responds back. So, but anyway, so hopefully that doesn't really answer the questions that were asked, but maybe gets you a little closer. Sorry about that.
It does. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. All right. So I think this was good. All right. So maybe what we do is we, with that last question in mind, maybe we move into, oh, wait a minute. Actually, I think, Maureen, you, chat. Oh, gee, Manelli, there's all sorts of chats here. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so Maureen just said Suri llama fiber standards are the same as for Suri alpaca. All right, somebody else just with regards to the blending said the upscale yarn shop that sells my yarn requested at least 10%, but no more than 20% merino wool, and the rest alpaca to meet customer demands. That's interesting. Let's see. Okay, some of these are wool related, so I may get to them later. Okay. Oh, actually, that's a good question. You know what? Nancy Lindemood typed this in, and it's actually a really good point. So Carl Heinrich and Jan, they used to make 100% Suri sweaters on their knitting machine. And I will say this, one of the things that Jan shared with me, because I said to her, like, wow, like, don't these grow? And what she said was that they found if they use, now this would be for knitting, but if they used a pattern that went at a diagonal, and repeated itself, that they found that the Suri held its shape, or the sweater, I should say, held its shape using 100% Suri. So I think it is probably doable. It's probably a matter of whether you knit or you know somebody who knits, maybe playing around with a little bit. I do know that most of their sweaters really had kind of they did have an open stitch to them. They were kind of lacy. So, okay. Okay. Good. All right. All right. Carol says, I love 100% Suri yarn, exclamation point. I always educate my customers about Suri. So before we move on to the next topic, then Carol, would you maybe want to? I don't think you've spoken yet, have you? Would
No,
you want to
not
share?
yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So, we have all Suris on our farm, and at first I was a Suri purist when it came to processing my yarn. I only wanted 100% Suri because that's what we raise as Suris. I've now expanded that to blend some fibers, but I still love my 100% Suri. Now, only maybe 3 years ago did I learn to weave. So Suri and weaving is perfect. And I'm just weaving scarves, but I love the drape in it. And nothing compares to 100% Suri when it comes to weaving. But I always educate my customers, I find out if they're going to knit, crochet. And I do have examples of 100% Suri knitted items and crocheted items. And just explain to them they want something loose and open because of the drape.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's see if we can move on and talk about blending with Wakaya. I know we've got a few people on here. I think we have a few people on here who blend with Wakaya, and I would love to hear some thoughts on that. Any hands? All right, I am not seeing any hands. Oh, no, here are a couple. Okay, Laurel, you're up.
Well, I blend with Wakaya a little differently than most people. I have blended in a like 40-60 blend of Wakaya and Suri. I've blended to create a lace weight that had silk and Wakaya and Suri in it, with Suri being like 50% and the Wakaya being 40 and then 10% silk. But where I blend it the most frequently is in felting. I do felting, and I put a base of just a very fine wispy base of Wakaya down to help the Suri kind of better stick to the silk underneath. So that's one way that I do it. I don't find that I would not blend my my fleeces that are grade 1 or 2 with Wakaya, because I think it draws them down instead of improving the fleece, because unless it's a really beautiful, bright Wakaya fleece, that we use brightness in Wakayas instead of saying luster, but it's the same quality of low scale height. And if it's a really bright, beautiful Wakaya fleece, I probably wouldn't hesitate to use Suri in equal or close to equal amounts with the Wakaya. But Suri's all about luster and hand, and if you add too much of anything that doesn't have the similar qualities, I find you're just drawing it down instead of improving upon it.
So, Laurel, I have a question for you. And why do that? Like, why? I have struggled personally with the concept. I guess the concept is maybe to sort of keep it all alpaca. I don't know beyond that thought process. Is there anything that the combination does that maybe you can't get with, you know, one or the other, or adding wool?
A little more loft
Okay,
to the yarn.
okay,
That's basically it.
okay.
But again, you always, when you pair Surrey with anything, you want, in my opinion, you want to pair it with something that, even though it might be graded the same, I've found that, like, a lot of mills will ask you, well, we kind of prefer, or why don't you blend it with some merino top, that's super fine or whatever. But if you run your hand across merino top and you run your hand across, that's grade 1, and you run your hand across grade 1 Surrey, they feel very different. The Surrey is much cooler and slicker and has that luster. So you just, whatever you blend your Surrey with, you have to be really cautious that you don't draw it down. So when I'm blending with Wakaya, I'm not blending I'm not blending grade 1 or grade 2 with Wakaya. I'm probably going to blend grade 3 or 4 with Wakaya.
Okay. Yeah, and for anybody who is kind of new to Surrey, I will say, and Laurel, you've been doing this a long time too, so you might or might not have heard this or have a thought, but I have always heard that Surrey, for lack of a better way to say it, it sort of tricks the hand by up to, say, 2 microns, 1 to 2 microns. So, and to your point, like an 18 micron wool does not feel the same as an 18 micron Surrey. So, and then that becomes hard to find say a 16 micron wool or a 15 micron wool. So certainly for the really fine Surrey, it can be kind of tricky to find something, I think, to blend it with that, to your point, doesn't end up making it feel just not quite as nice. So any other thoughts here? Any other hands, or again, new people with questions on this?
I see
Right.
that,
Well, we
I see
fewer
that
people than I thought.
Carl and Jan have joined the show. It might be interesting to hear their comments
yeah.
about 100% Surrey, if they're willing to comment.
Yeah, and also I think you guys, Carl and Jan, I think you guys do or have done in the past a lot of blending with Wakaya. So would love to hear your thoughts on that as well, in terms of what what you get out of that blend, Suri and Wakaya. So Carl, you have
guys are
to
muted,
unmute
Jan.
yourself. Yeah, you're automatically muted. You have to unmute yourself.
I think they're getting the sip part of the equation.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. I think what you get when you blend Wakaya and Suri together is an opportunity to say you got a product that is 100% alpaca, and it has a lot of the characteristics of blending it with wool.
Okay. And did you guys find when you had your mill, did you find it easier to run a blend of Wakaya and Suri, or say as easy as blending Suri and wool, or was it still kind of a challenge?
We didn't do much wool.
We didn't do much blending of Suri with wool.
No.
Okay.
Hardly ever. We probably had bad experiences with some stuff that we'd seen made up with wool, and we just never thought that it was necessary when we had Wakaya all over the place that we could do basically the same finish with.
Okay. And so if you think about running, because you guys ran 100% Suri, when you think about running 100% Suri versus running a Suri and Wakaya blend? Did you find there was a difference? Was one easier than the other?
I think the blend was a little easier,
I'd say the blend was
But
probably
a
a little
little
easier,
easier,
a
not-
little easier, but
not leaps and bounds.
the advantage was for us, you try to make the Suri finer so that the garment's lighter. And Wakaya would help us fill in the gaps in our garment with really fine thread, okay? We lost
You mean
that.
because of the loft? You mean because of the loft?
Because of the loft, yes.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. And what was the blend that you guys typically would either do for yourselves or recommend for others in terms of the mix of Wakaya and Suri?
We did 50-50 blend for most of our garments lately. At the end, we did, especially sweaters. But then we would do 20, 30,
Yeah,
about 20 or 30
20
for
or 30.
for the yarn typically.
Okay. 20, 30, meaning 20.
20 or 30% Wakaya.
Okay. Okay.
For our sock blends, what we would do is do a 50-50 blend of alpaca and then add 20% nylon.
Got it. Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay.
Now you know all our
Any,
secrets.
there you go. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I think, was it Elizabeth that asked about the Suri llama? Any follow-up questions there? Oh, wait, we've got Jean Van Effen. Okay, Jean, I'm sorry. I'll have Jean. She had her hand up.
Okay, my question is about the length difference between Suri and Wakaya, and when you're blending it, how do you make that into a nice even yarn? Does it blend well, or does that matter?
I don't think there was much of a problem.
Are we on? Can you hear?
Yep, yep, we can hear you.
You have to be aware of the limitations of length, whether you're blending anything, no matter what you're blending in there.
Two fleeces,
Two fleeces, they got to be close. They got to be within 1.5 inches, maybe at the worst case of each other. So, I mean, that's even in one fleece. So, we used long staple cotton. We used, you couldn't use great short Wakaya unless you had short alpaca. So yes, we did worry about length because it would create noils basically in the carding operation.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just wondering, because most of the Suri, tends to be longer than Wakaya. It's hard for me to find Wakaya that is nice and long like most of the Suri, but so I kind of like the shorter Suri fibers when I do come across them.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you don't find many 7-inch Wakayas, so you just you have to with that, but you find a lot of 4-inch Suri too. So that's
What can be done?
it's a good candidate.
Okay. And
I'm going to do it. I haven't yet, but I will.
Yvonne, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak to the llama question because I also have llamas, Suri and medium and long wool or heavy wool llamas. So, and I treat my llama fiber the same as I treat my alpaca fiber. And I just got a bunch of stuff back from the mill that's llama, and it is beautiful.
Okay. Do you have Suri llamas, or do you have, like, I guess I'll say regular llamas for lack of a better?
So llamas, you want a quick llama education. Llamas come in lots of different fiber styles. So the Suris, then you've got your silkies, and you've got your standards, and then you've got your medium and your heavy wools. So yes, I do have Suri llamas as well as Suri alpacas. But I
Okay.
treat all my llama fiber the same as I treat all of my alpaca fiber.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. So the next topic that we would have is talking about blending with wool. So before we go on to that, I'll just double check if, and Carl and Jan, I know you got on late. We actually had a kind of a pretty good actually very good conversation about just not blending, just using 100% Suri. And we did note that you all used to make sweaters. I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Did you make sweaters with 100% Suri?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so we did kind of comment on that a little bit. So and we're breaking this all down. So we talked about not blending, then we talked about blending with Wakaya. We're going to talk about blending with wool, and then we're going to kind of talk about blending with other, which obviously would be a very broad topic. But so anyway, so before we go on, everybody, to talking about wool, does anybody have any other comments or questions on blending with Wakaya? All right, Elizabeth.
What was the ratio for the sock blend again? I got the 20% nylon, but what were the components for the Suri and Wakaya?
It was just the way we mix it.
It was 50-50
Yeah.
Surrey. We did socks out of 50-50 Wakaya and Surrey.
And then you put in the 20% nylon. Is that like, how
Yes.
did it all?
Then we
Okay.
blended it in. So it's
Yeah.
all three. So you do 40-40, or what is it? 35-35 and 30%, or whatever the number is of each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did that so
Yeah.
the socks may have a certain amount of luster.
Okay.
Does that
That
does that make sense, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it does. I would have to have a mill do it anyway. But it was just kind of intriguing. I'm a big sock knitter, but I've just never even entertained Suri because of the drape. So it's kind of cool. It might be something to look forward to in the future.
Can I chime in on your socks? My sock blend is 70% Suri, 20% wool, and 10% nylon, and they're beautiful socks.
And who's speaking?
Oh, it was Yvonne.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good.
Yvonne, you said that was 70%.
I do it was 70% Suri,
Suri.
20% wool,
Okay.
and 10% nylon.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
And if you want to see pictures of socks, just reach out to me afterwards and I'll show you.
Oh, great. We'll do.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, there you go. So, gosh, Elizabeth, we're going to just keep using you as the person who advances us to the next category. You helped us go from pure Suri to Suri and Wakaya, and now we're going to go from Suri and Wakaya to Suri and wool. So anybody out there have thoughts? And I think with regards to wool, there's probably maybe more like what percentages people use and what they then use those yarns for when they have a certain amount of wool in there. Any thoughts?
When we
All
did-
right,
when we-
I'm gonna
when we-
look for, all right, Laurel, go ahead.
I used to use wool. I'm not going to use it anymore for the reasons that I spoke about before. Well, I do take that back. My grade 3, I have my own sheep, And so I will use the grade 3, 4, and 5 I will use with wool for my sheep. But I certainly won't pay a mill for top, merino top to blend with. Because as I said before, I think it just pulls down the qualities that Surrey is known for.
Okay. And Yvonne, you've got your hand up too.
Yeah, I too have my own sheep, so I blend with my own wool. But when I first started out processing, the mill that I was using at the time, I guess, educated me or told me um, I needed at least a certain amount of wool to go through their machines, and it only had to be 10%. And because I was a sock knitter and I was always told it needed to have the nylon, that's how I came up with my 70 20 10 blend of sock yarn. So that's been the recipe that I used for all of my yarn, regardless of whether it was Suri or Wakaya, for a long time. And now that I've got a new mill, we're playing around with all kinds of stuff. So it's fun. It's fun.
So I will say I totally agree with Laurel in terms of the hand changing. You know, you start off with a certain micron of Surrey and you add the wool, and it doesn't necessarily have that really nice kind of slick cool feel to it. So I totally agree. I do tend to process at commercial mills, and as I mentioned early in this whole thing, commercial mills just cannot they just cannot process 100% Surrey. And quite honestly, most of them, and I'm talking commercial mills, most of them struggle with 100% Wakaya. So putting that combination together doesn't necessarily help you. So I am somebody who has done a lot of processing with wool blended in. For me, when I'm out at yarn shows and that sort of thing, most of the people coming through, some of them are weavers, and having the wool in there probably isn't particularly important to weavers, but for knitters, it can be because I find that the wool does, relative to Wakaya, it tends to have more elasticity to it. That's been my experience. Again, other people may disagree with me, but what I will say is that it actually, for me, it actually makes it kind of an easier sale, if you will, because when I'm blending it in with the wool, and particularly when I have my sample garments out, I find that I can really like tell a story about, yeah, this is lofty and it looks like wool,
Yeah.
but look at the drape, and look at the luster. And so it makes it a little bit of an easier sale for me in terms of setting the Surrey apart and explaining why I blended that Surrey in and kind of telling the story of Surrey. So that has been my experience, but I definitely agree with Laurel that the hand definitely changes when you add wool, even if you're adding something soft. But I've blended as much as 40% wool, and I have kind of a thicker, what would it be? It's not bulky. Maybe it's bulky. I don't know. I get bulky and chunky kind of mixed up. But anyway, it's one of those thicker yarns. And it's got 40% wool in it. And I still have some really nice luster to it. And it definitely, even with 40% wool, I definitely get drape out of it. But that's been my experience, but I definitely appreciate what other people have said. Nancy, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I have used wool, and I like having some Surrey wool blends because then I can sell those to people based on what types of items they like to make, where wool might be more important for them in the garment. And then this last round, I played around with having Cormo added into my yarn, and like on a 10% basis, and kind of pleased with how that turned out. So, you know, a 10% blend, and it really added some loft to the yarn. So it turned out pretty well.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions or experience?
There we go.
All right.
Did that work?
There you go. Yeah.
But,
We liked Cormo a lot.
we did more Cormo years ago than we did more recently, but we did blend with Cormo several times. I mean, quite a bit, for a couple of years there.
It's a very nice product.
But the other one is Angora. Angora
No,
is one.
no.
Well, Angora, yeah, we'll get to that when we talk about the other.
Oh, others? Okay, those are things that are going to be others. Okay. I figured
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
four-legged creatures. They could be wool.
Yeah, no. Wool is true. We're truly talking sheep here.
Okay.
Most of the time we work with merino. And that's it, you know, there's merino and there's merino.
Yeah.
And so the stuff that we were doing for ourselves, we would use Cormo.
Okay. All right.
Just
Yeah. Jean, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm done.
Okay. Jean Van Effen, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so my question was, if you're doing a Suri or even a Wakaya sock yarn blend, what grade of Suri would you use? What micron Suri would make a good sock blend? Because I don't think I'd use grade 1 or 2.
We
No.
use strictly grade 2.
Grade 2 is what we used.
Grade
Really?
2.
And
Grade 2
Suri.
Wakaya and grade 2 Suri.
Okay.
And did you all not find though? I'm sure it felt great when the sock was made. Did you all find like how long did they last?
Forever. I got them on right now. See?
Huh. Interesting. Okay, that's
Right.
good to know.
They wear like iron, and a little bit different than what you were saying though about Suri. One of the things that I tell people is to put their hand inside the sock. Don't feel the outside. It doesn't matter what the outside feels like, because your shoe doesn't care. But if they put their hand on the inside, that Suri is so slippery that it just feels like it's in silk.
Yeah, that's a great point, Carl, because I just love slipping on socks that have Suri in them.
Mhm.
And just to your point, I mean, your foot just like is just thanking you the entire time the sock is coming on and on you. And you're right, the outside, who cares? Because you're right, the shoe doesn't care. Great point.
Are we talking about commercially made Suri socks, or I was thinking about spinning a yarn with that blend and then hand knitting a sock, or what, you know, because I know how the commercial socks are made with the, you know, it's kind of nylon on the outside and the alpaca on the inside, but you can't do that with a hand knit sock.
No.
No, the nylon in our socks you can't find. You're blending nylon fibers of the same size, same micron as the Suri and Wakaya, and even the same color. You know, we would use black, we would use white, all that jazz. But you don't ever see they do add a nylon thread as part of their process, but you never see it. And we've made dress socks that way, and we've made hiking socks that way and everything like that. For a long, long time.
Okay.
So Laurel, it looks like maybe you have your hand up again? No, she went
no,
away. Oh, no, there you are. Yeah.
No, I did. Two things. Somebody should ask Nancy Lindemood about making socks with Suri, because she's just headed up a big project for Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, collecting fiber for a big sock project. But the other thing I was going to ask, where did you get your Cormo to blend?
That's hard to
Did
find.
you have top, or did you get fleeces?
No, I actually bought a Cormo fleece from a local farm that I know.
What's her name?
What about Jan and Carl?
Yeah. I don't know. There's a breeder, and everybody will know it, but we can't think of the name of her. She's near Frankfurt. That had Cormo sheep, and we did some processing for her, and we also bought fiber from her directly and then processed it just like normal.
Well, I have Cormos. I just was wondering if you could buy Cormo top someplace. That's
We
all.
never bought top from anybody ever.
Not even the Merino?
No.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Monica, we have a new talker. Yay, Monica.
I was just going to ask that you repeat the name of the person that has a big sock project going on in Kentuckiana. Who and what?
Oh, Nancy Lindemood.
Oh, okay.
She's part of
Thank
this group here tonight.
Yeah.
I've heard her speak. Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was it.
All righty. Anybody else have any thoughts one way or the other with regards to blending Suri with wool?
Why waste the Suri?
She's
okay. That's fine. Okay, so then we will just we'll kind of the last topic here, and I know it's broad, but I will say blending with other. I think some of the more common, well, I guess what comes to my mind, I shouldn't say most common, that's probably not right. What comes to my mind is prospectively blending with having some silk in there, whether that's, I know Laurel, you mentioned a Suri Wakaya silk, whether that's Suri wool silk, whether it's just Suri and silk. Kind of any thoughts on that? I think, Carl, you mentioned Angora, which I'm not certain if you meant mohair or if you meant bunny.
He meant mohair.
Yeah, we did a bunny too.
Well, we've done bunny.
We did
All
Angora.
right, and then
We did mohair too.
And then there's bunny. Yep. Okay. And mohair. I guess I'm going to ask, I can ask Carl and Jan and anybody else here who's had experience. What is your experience with blending Suri with mohair? Because theoretically they are in a raw state. I would say they seem to be, mohair seems to be the most common to Suri. I know Suri can be finer. It does seem to me that once they're spun up, it seems like mohair is more, I guess it has a halo is what they say. I guess I would call it hairy, but it has a halo to it, more of a halo. What was your experience with blending Suri and mohair?
It was wonderful.
You liked it? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I have many times left a bundle of mohair locks on, out to sea, and everybody looked at it when it's beautiful Suri. It is in good mohair. It was as lustrous as any Surrey I've seen.
Yeah.
And
They fit together very well.
they go together very well. They spin very beautifully. Some of our
Of course,
art yarn that we would do would be, we've done that with that blend several times over.
Okay. And once you're done, is the mohair, does it have that halo to it, or is that something that's a commercial? I mean, I really don't know what.
That's a commercial thing.
Yeah, I've never noticed it.
Yeah.
It's a commercial thing. It's brushed like the Suri, and no.
Interesting. Okay.
What was
Mohair by itself
the
is
ratio?
just like Suri by itself.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And what's the ratio that you guys used?
Probably about
I do
20%.
I do a fleece and a fleece.
Okay. So 50-50.
It's not
Carl and Jan, what did you guys do?
Well, it depends on if it was for me, I would do it for about 50-50. If it were for a customer, I'd do it the way they wanted it. But
Well,
normally,
right. Yeah.
normally it would be about 20%.
Okay. And why, I guess then the question in my mind would be, like, why do it? In other words, they're both straight, pretty straight fibers. They're both lustrous, assuming that you can get the microns to kind of, match up. Like, what does the mohair bring to Suri? Or what does Suri bring to mohair?
so
me.
mohair is called nature's nylon. So it's very strong. If you were going to knit socks with it, you would
Okay.
need nylon. And for those of us who are trying to get away from using petroleum-based products in our yarns, mohair would be a substitute for nylon.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Carl and Jan, did you guys have any thoughts on that? Or not on that, but I mean, like, why did you all do that?
Well,
Partly because, everything, what we were doing, most of it was customer based. So we had people that had mohair, and we wanted to know, could we make a blend and things like that. It makes some very lustrous yarn.
yeah.
It
We
really,
did some work with Normans Angoras.
in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Normans Angoras. We did some work for them. We spun some of theirs 100%, and then we spun some 50-50, and
We made some scarves for
we
them.
made some scarves for them. That was 50-50, weren't they? Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll make an offer if anybody wants any mohair. Reach out to me afterwards, and I've got colors. I'll send you some.
Is that it? That's Yvonne?
Yes, I just shared 22, so I got fiber.
Okay.
Don't we all?
Nancy, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm glad Yvonne mentioned that about mohair, because I had gone back to, I don't know if you guys remember the article that Gabrielle Men wrote for Purely Surrey back in 2019. It was about blending, and that was one of her recommendations as a substitute for nylon if you wanted to get away from petroleum-based artificial type fibers. And then in that article, just kind of goes back to the blending with wool topic. She's got a photo where she spun 100% Surrey, and then she started adding merino like in 10% increments, and it's a good visual, and you can kind of see how the yarn changes visually. And last year when I ran into her at the national event here in Kentucky, I had donated the fleece for that, so she actually gave me the little skeins that she spun up, and it's interesting to feel them and feel you know, how the 100% Suri feels like really good and cool and soft, and then how it changes, but it gets more fluffy the more wool that is added. So just a reminder that, you know, that article is out there as well as a reference.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nancy. So I have a question on that then. So Nature's Nylon. So I guess I was thinking, but I might not be right on this. I was thinking, and particularly when thinking about socks and adding nylon, I guess I was thinking it was, aren't you adding it because it's also, isn't it crimpy?
No,
Or
No,
what
No.
really are you adding it for?
strength.
wearability.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay. Huh.
typically a cotton sock, you'll wears out, you'll see a nylon thread where the cotton was there and then there's a nylon thread next to it. Okay. And you can see in between. But if you put nylon fiber into the thread that you're making to make the sock out of, now all of the alpaca kind of has that in there itself, and you don't ever get that worn out sock with strings in it.
Huh.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, it's part of it's actually part of the main fiber. It'd be like putting white nylon with the cotton and spinning a yarn that has nylon and cotton in it, and then you make the sock with it.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, that actually, I guess, brings me to my next point. So I know Carl and Jan, you mentioned that you have spun, I think, no, maybe I misunderstood. Have you spun Suri with cotton? That
Yeah.
seems like a real mismatch in length.
Yeah, it does. But you know, it makes it real fun.
It makes something that's interesting. Not all yarn has to be perfectly smooth. Ask Jan. Okay.
Oh,
Sometimes
before we go on, I will say this. Nancy, you have your hand up. As we're talking about mohair, did you want to say something or no? Okay, she just put her hand down. I'm sorry. All right, so we're going to go to Suri and cotton, which to me is interesting. Jan and Carl, what were your experiences?
Finding cotton with any kind of long staple is practically impossible,
Yep.
first of all.
We were working also with the cotton industry.
Uh-huh.
Okay. They wanted to have alpaca in a cotton sock. That was one part of it. The other part was there were people that it makes it lighter weight.
Yeah.
So that there were people that wanted that ultra lightweight fiber or lightweight yarn, and you know, but so we tried. You know, that's the deal is people ask you for things, and you know, you take a look and see what you can do. But we did do with the cotton industry. They were really anxious to try to do something in a cotton sock that had a percentage of alpaca in it.
We ended up
Got
making a garment, like a little T-shirt, out of the cotton Suri blend, and it was not knobby. You know, it wasn't a smooth. It was a textured yarn.
Yeah.
But it was not unattractive.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, it seems like it might be a little easier to blend wakaya with cotton just because the wakaya tends to be shorter. It's still longer than the cotton, but at least you're maybe a little bit closer.
finding long enough cotton was hard, very hard.
But you also, so you still adding some Suri to it, you still get those attributes that we like. Like, you know, we still get the drape, we still get the luster, and all those things are added to that cotton garment. If you're doing a finished cotton sweater or lightweight sweater or a top, you know, then all of a sudden it adds all of those things that feel and touch and that you want.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will note, I did look at the chats, and Deb Christner made a comment just to everybody in terms of wool blend. Polworth is a nice long staple wool that tends to blend well as well. I think probably you need to find a farm or ranch that has Polworth as opposed to buying it in the commercial. But that does make a nice blend. Okay. Good. All right. Let's see. All right. Yeah, I will tell you just from my end in terms of quote unquote other. I had when I started making yarns, I had this great idea that I was going to blend a little bit of silk in with the Suri, and I was going to use now I can't think of the type of silk. Some of you may know it's golden colored. I can't think of it, but anyway.
Jan said Targi. Is that what's called?
Is it
doesn't
Tessa
sound
silk?
quite-
Is it Tessa?
No, it wasn't Tessa. But anyway, it was supposed to be a very fine silk, and it's naturally like a golden color. And the reason I was doing that was because a lot of it's kind of a light gold, and a lot of the Suri yarns I was running were like a light fawn. In order, again, I'm running more on a commercial level, so I had to blend colors. And so I ended up a lot of times with a kind of a light fawn color. And I thought that the silk would work really well in there. And I was using really fine Suri for this blend. And the silk was supposed to be fine. I ran it several times. I never really did like it in terms of the feel of it. And so on that particular line of yarn, I actually switched to bamboo. And now it only has 10%. It's a 90% Suri, 10% bamboo. But I really like that blend a lot. It is slick for sure. And if you've got knitters, they've got to kind of watch the types of needles that they use. And you're still going to be making very lacy garments with it. But I really like that blend, and I really, when I dyed it, I just felt like it all took the dye really well. And I guess a different topic, but anyway, I really enjoyed that blend quite a bit, and I sell a fair amount of that. And I also do one with a 10% bunny Angora. And that one is kind of interesting. People are either they're like really allergic to Angora, or they really love Angora. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot in between. And so
Georgia. We have a friend in Georgia that sells Surrey bunny
She raises Angoras
and Surreys.
and Surreys. So we just blended them together, but it was incredibly soft.
Yeah, it's really nice feeling.
Yeah.
I had a very coarse Surrey one time, Liz. It was like 30 micron at least, and we blended it with Angora, and it just sold so quickly.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But you're right, not everyone can be around Angora.
Yeah, and I find some of the yarn samples I have that maybe I've had for a while really felt it. I haven't washed them or anything, but just from the humidity here in Missouri, being out in the open, they just felted with the Angora in there. I haven't had that experience with any of the other blends that I've done. Laurel, you have your hand up?
I do. Just a couple things about blending with the silk. There are all sorts of different varieties of silk.
Yes.
And I love it because again, I'm always looking for fibers that really enhance the quality. The other advantage of silk over some other dyes like fibers like bamboo is that silk will take the same dyes that Suri will. So if you're having yarn made and you have the intention of dyeing it yourself, the silk will take the dye. If you're using bamboo, or my other favorite is tencel, you have to be careful because the tencel will not dye, and those fibers have a tendency to clump a little bit occasionally throughout the yarn. So you'll end up with these white patches of fiber. Now, I found the cure for that because you can actually buy what I would call bamboo top, or that's been dyed, or tencel top that's been dyed into colors. So if you know what you want to take your yarn to, you can have your yarn blended at the mill with your colored top. And then when you go to dye it, it'll just blend right in with like I get blue tops, and I'll blend it into the yarn. And then when I go to dye the Suri, 10% usually, sometimes maybe 20% of bamboo, silk, or tencel, then that fiber already being dyed will just blend into the blue when I dye the Suri blue. Did that make sense?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. I will tell you, my experience has been the same with tencel, that it doesn't always take the dye, and I kind of end up with some white pieces. I actually had that same experience with some of the silk, interestingly enough. Now, maybe it's because I was using this gold silk as opposed to regular. I have not had that experience with the bamboo. It's one of the reasons that I just personally, and maybe it's just been luck, but I have not gotten those white pieces, and I haven't gotten any clumping with it. But again, I'm only using 10%, so it's a pretty small percentage. Beth.
Yeah, I've dyed with, I have some tinsel that I just dyed yesterday, and it took the dye pretty well. I was pretty pleased with it. It has some highlighting, but there's not any big white spots or anything from it. I haven't had trouble with it.
Okay. Yvonne?
Question to see if anybody has used rose fiber in any of their blends.
I have, Yvonne.
Okay. How does it do with the Suri?
I did it for roving, and I dyed it beforehand, and then I had it blended into the roving.
Oh,
So
okay.
I used a different dye.
Okay. Because I'm getting ready to go to the mill in a couple of weeks, and I've got 2 pounds of rose that I think I want to use, but I'm not sure I'm not sure what I'm doing yet with it.
Yeah, I actually used RIT dye, believe it or not,
So
and
you
dyed
suggest,
some rose silk.
so you suggest dyeing it before?
That's just what I did. So
Oh,
I haven't done it the other way.
okay.
We always died in
I'll let you know what happens.
All right, folks, this has been great. We are, though, I think, coming to the end. It is, oh my gosh, 8:29. All right, I think I have to say goodbye really quickly to everybody because I think this ends at Central Time, 8:30. Yikes. All right, thank you, everybody. This has been awesome. Really appreciate it. And October 18th is our next one. So stay tuned. That's a little bit of a fluid date, but stay tuned. I think that's when it'll be. And thank you. This has been awesome.
Well done.
All right. All right.
Everybody.
All right. Good night.
Good night.